Hi, I'm Pastor Bucky Beach from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and Lutheran Campus Ministry in Houghton, Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. Today's sermon is for the 14th Sunday after Pentecost, otherwise known as September 6th. And as you can see, today I'm preaching from our greenhouse that is already being taken down for the winter. Winter comes early in the UP, but we didn't have a good garden summer anyway. Luckily, some friends gave us some homegrown tomatoes, and I'd show you one, but we ate them. There was one, just one, that we let sit on the kitchen counter a little too long, and it lost some of its flavor, which prompted Julie to say, "It's a sin to waste homegrown tomatoes." And it occurs to me that it's very helpful for pastors to have a useful and working definition of sin. Look him up if you don't know a legendary singer-songwriter, Guy Clark, who wrote and sang the song called Homegrown Tomatoes. Ain't nothing in the world that I like better than bacon and lettuce and homegrown tomatoes. Up in the morning, out in the garden, get you a ripe one. Don't get a hard one. Plant 'em in the spring, eat 'em in the summer. All winter without 'em's a culinary bummer. I forget all about the sweating and digging every time I go out and pick a big one. Homegrown tomatoes. Homegrown tomatoes. What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things money can't buy. That's true love and homegrown tomatoes. The readings for this week, Ezekiel chapter 33. Ezekiel warns us that his people are to warn the wicked to turn from their ways. Song's been going through my head all week like Carlos Santana singing, "You've got to change your evil ways." But more than that, Ezekiel says those who have a relationship with God are to warn those who are not in relationship with God that they need to change their evil ways. But God is also saying to Ezekiel, I don't want anyone to die. But the message to God's people is that if they don't warn others, the blood of those who die will be on their hands. Well, that's serious stuff to get right. Or to put it another way, that's stuff we don't want to get wrong. First, we have to figure out what evil is in today's world. And this is also essential, that we must not be self-righteous, which makes us just as wrong as others are. That's why it's simpler just to say it's a sin to waste homegrown tomatoes and then call it good. That way no one is offended. Guy Clark continues, I've been out to eat, and that's for sure, but it's nothing a homegrown tomato won't cure. Put 'em in a salad, put 'em in a stew. You can make your own tomato juice. Eat 'em with eggs, eat 'em with gravy, eat 'em with beans, pinto or navy. Put 'em on the side, put 'em in the middle, put a homegrown tomato on a hotcake griddle. I deeply appreciate a good song. It gets me laughing, it lightens my mood. And I need that, especially when, as Karl Barth once advised, you read scripture in one hand and a newspaper in the other. This week I can quote two journalists who recently wrote, "We are locked in a cold civil war. The United States has become two countries impermeable to each other, where each side thinks the other presents an existential threat to the ideas of America, where persuasion is all but impossible." And this one, the cultural civil war that has been simmering underneath the surface is now boiling amid protests over police violence. We usually define sin in ways that works for us. C.S. Lewis once wrote, Most of us are not really approaching the subject in order to find out what Christianity says. We are approaching it in the hope of finding support from Christianity for the views of our own party. We are looking for an ally where we are offered either a master or a judge. I would clarify that we are looking for something with which to judge others, because we see sin in others. And it's not hard to do that. It's also hard not to see it when people in the streets of our cities are executing others because they consider themselves righteous. We have reduced sin and evil to personal definitions, and mine is better than yours. Responding to that human tendency, the prophets tell us to turn back, which means in one and only one direction, toward God. Turn back, of course, reminds me of the first line from a song from Godspell, turn back, O man. Well, Ezekiel says to us this week, turn back, O mortal, turn back from your sinful ways. But in today's legalistic ways of thinking about everything, perhaps what we need is a better definition of sin than just breaking commandments, resulting in do this and don't do that, which of course once again reminds me of the song Signs by the Five Man Electrical Band. But stay with me here. A better working definition of sin today is broken relationship. Turning back toward God is about recognizing where and how relationships are broken. And turning back is seeking conciliation and reconciliation. And it starts with ourselves, not with others. We need to be specific. We can't defend any person shooting another person in the streets of Kenosha or Portland or anywhere. It doesn't matter which side a person is on. That's indefensible. That is evil. Ezekiel's not just saying, turn back. He is also saying to all of us, wake up. Our awakening or our woke moment is not about what someone else is or should be doing, but about ourselves and what we are thinking and doing. Paul reminds us today in Romans 13, when he quotes the Ten Commandments, that you shall not has nothing to do with someone else. The emphasis is on you and me. So trite as it sounds, love is all you need, thanks to John Lennon. Difficult as this is, love has everything to do with what is coming from within you and me, and not with what our neighbor is doing or who our neighbor is. Love actually involves us with the people around us. Love invites relationship, even with those that we consider to be our enemies. So advocate for change. Yes, speak out, protest, march, get involved, or not. But love is most real between those who actually see and interact with each other. We need to get real with our scripture. There's nothing abstract about it. A change of heart happens when we get to know someone, when we listen and try to understand, and then go from there. It's all too easy to make decisions for others as if we know what is best. And to that the prophets say, wake up. Let me jump to the Gospel of Matthew to point out something that we often understand only in one way. In chapter 18, we read about the practice of conflict resolution that is cited in most congregational constitutions. If a church member sins against you, go to that person and name the sin. If they listen, your relationship is restored. If they don't, take one or two others with you, even more if necessary. And then if the relationship is not restored, Matthew says that Jesus says, "Let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector." Now we think that means we turn away then from them and leave them behind because they are bad people and they won't listen to us, right? Today, who are those categories? They might be as normal as a Republican or a Democrat, or they might be as extreme as Antifa or white nationalists. But what did Jesus do with Gentiles and tax collectors? What did Jesus do with the Samaritan woman, with scribes and Pharisees, with those who were demon-possessed? He challenged them, but he did not condemn them. He had a relationship with them. Now, I don't really want to do that. I just want to stay mad. Self-righteousness makes me feel good. But Jesus, bless his heart, doesn't tolerate the condemnation of others. Now, personally, I don't think this is such a great idea on God's part, but God binds God's self to us in Jesus. And then in God coming to us, all of us, we are bound to each other. We are bound to our neighbor, no matter who that is. We are bound in love. And love invites relationship, even with those with whom we vehemently disagree. But then we don't have to agree. We don't even have to like others. But we do have to love them. Which means that we are called to continue to try and nurture relationships and be reconciled to one another. But being specific, again, how do we cultivate that? Well, it's like planting tomato seeds in a garden. The last verse of Homegrown Tomatoes is this: "If I was to change this life that I lead, I'd be Johnny Tomato Seed, 'cause I know what this country needs. Homegrown tomatoes in every yard you see. When I die, don't bury me in a box in a cemetery. Out in the garden would be much better. I could be pushing up homegrown tomatoes. Homegrown tomatoes. Homegrown tomatoes. What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things money can't buy. That's true love and homegrown tomatoes. It's a sin to waste homegrown tomatoes."